Awesome. I think we're recording. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the UTC Real Estate Club podcast. This is episode 7 with your host, Nick Galbreath, and our guest, Antoine Martel in LA. You're from LA, right, Antoine?
Yep. I was born in Toronto, actually, but I grew up in San Francisco, but now I live in LA.
Awesome. And Antoine, just kind of our first segment of the podcast is just kind of going back from day one of I was watching your Instagram and you said last semester in college you didn't want to go get a job. You wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Can you kind of just describe that process of getting into real estate?
Yeah, so I was last semester, or actually a year before graduating, my brother took me and my dad to a seminar about real estate investing, learned about real estate investing, fell in love with it. And then I learned about flipping houses, wholesaling, apartment buildings, all that kind of stuff in that weekend seminar. And then what happened is I was graduating in about a year. I tried to do this in LA, like all of these different real estate investment strategies, and nothing worked. I was like too broke, didn't have enough money to make all this stuff happen. So I started looking out of state, started networking when I was in college with people locally, like on biggerpockets.com. So I'd go message people all day long on Bigger Pockets. Hey, I'm a local college student. I want to learn how you invested in real estate. How did you start? And I would just go on coffee meetings all day long. I would move my classes from 5 to 10 p.m. and just meet people every single day. And then I finally, like, after collecting all these stories about how all these people did it, I was like, all right, man, I can do this. This is easy. And so I started calling people out of state, started building my team out of state, started choosing a market. First market was Memphis, Tennessee. Finally, I cold called somebody who had a house for sale in Memphis. And I ended up buying that house, raised the money from my dad. So my dad had like $40,000 in the bank. He wanted to do something with it in real estate. And so we ended up buying a house for like 35 grand, renovated it for 5 grand, and then did a cash out refinance on that deal, like right before graduating. And so then after I did that, that's kind of called the BRRRR strategy. So buy it, rehab it, rent it out, refinance it. So after I did that first BRRRR, I went to my dad and I was like, hey, I can keep doing this after graduating college. Just give me some time, give me 6 months or whatever. Let me see how many of these I can do. And I ended up doing, like, graduated May 2017. And then by December 2017, so like scaled up pretty.
You still hear me okay, Antoine? I think
I started selling houses.
Okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think my service is
good?
Weak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you were buying and selling houses in Memphis?
Yeah, so buying them, doing the BRRRR strategy, got up to like 10 houses, and then started selling houses out of that portfolio because we had kind of ran out of money. And we started selling them to like friends, family members, or just acquaintances. And people started buying these houses from us with tenants in place, property management in place, fully renovated, rented out. And I was like, man, this is a great idea. Why don't we do more of these houses and sell them to our friends and family members, et cetera? And so that's exactly what we did. So 2018, we started buying houses to buy them, renovate them, rent them out, and then sell them to friends, family members, other people in California, New York, other expensive markets. And that's what we started doing. And now here we are a couple years later. We've done over 300 projects. We're doing like 10 to 20 houses a month at this point. And we're in like 5 to 6 different markets across the country.
That's awesome, Antoine. And just kind of going back to your last semester in college, why out of state? And how was it? Can you kind of describe the environment of building a team, especially out of state, when in college, and just having your dad, believing in you, you can do this? Can you kind of describe?
Yeah. So why out of state? First of all, when you have 40 grand and you're in LA, there's nothing you can do in real estate here locally. So it had to be out of state. So then I started looking at markets out of state. Okay, where can you buy a house out of state for 40 or 50,000 bucks? And so I started finding these markets out of state, and I was like, oh wow, you actually can buy houses out here for $20,000 or $30,000, renovate them. So 40 grand is now like a big budget. Whereas in LA, I mean, you need like $400,000 to do anything, and that's just going to be the down payment for your $1 million house and the renovation costs. So that's kind of why. My dad and that kind of involvement he was involved with me kind of every step of the way. So after I went to that seminar, me and him just kept like trying a bunch of different stuff. He was working full time. So after work, he would kind of come and we would have a chat about what happened that day or that week or whatever. And we would just keep trying different things. So we started to do stuff locally, started making offers on houses in LA, just never got accepted. Okay, how about Fresno? Okay, how about Vegas? And then we're like, well, we're going to do Vegas, which is like a 6-hour drive. We might as well do out of state. And, it doesn't make any sense. I'm never going to drive 4 or 6 hours to go like visit properties. Doesn't make any sense. So then we started doing out of state, and that's really where like the light bulb went off that, hey, we can actually do stuff with our, small $40,000.
Absolutely. And what does your team look like today, Antoine? I know your family is all involved in this business. And I was listening to your the Multifamily War Room podcast with Charles Dobbins, so I got to hear your dad talk, Eric.
Yep.
He's the actuary of the business. What he was describing. So that was really exciting. I got to hear him before we had this podcast.
So my brother joined first, I believe, because he was trying to be a realtor in the Bay Area. He joined, and then my dad quit his job, and he's been working for since he graduated college. So he's been working for 30 years. So he quit his job. Then my mom quit her job. So it's a whole family business now. And then we have, an acquisitions team, a sales team, which is my mom is on that team to help sell the houses. We have an acquisition team that goes and analyzes all the deals to buy. And then we have a couple of virtual assistants that help input data into our CRM and stuff. And so I think we have close to 10 employees with Martel Turnkey. And then we have some other businesses too that we started along the way, which has a wholesaling company. Mm-hmm. So Martel Turnkey wanted to, buy more and more houses. So we actually started a wholesaling company to help wholesale houses to Martel Turnkey. And so I hired 2 of my friends from college. So a year after they graduated college, they were trying to do these Shopify stores or e-commerce stores, and they were not making any money. And so I went to them and said, hey, how about I hire you guys, and you guys, instead of working so hard on this thing that's not making any money, how about you both quit your jobs and come start wholesaling and wholesale deals to Martel Turnkey? I have, a huge buyer for you. They're buying 10, 20 houses a month. And so gave them both a job offer to quit their jobs. They both put their 2-week notice, and they started that wholesaling company January 2020. So right before COVID started. And now they're up to 15 employees, and they're doing 10 to 20 wholesales a month right now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's super awesome. And wholesaling is such a big thing. College, our listeners, college students can kind of jump into, whether it be door knocking, cold calling. How was that? Sure. How was that process kind of unrolled when you got your 2 friends, your 2 college friends? What were they doing at the start of it?
So what were they doing? They were mostly setting up the systems and then buying lists, and they were texting them because there was only 2 people, and I think they just hired a virtual assistant right off the bat. So setting up their CRM, setting up their text message dialer, and then kind of just making sure everything was working. And then they asked Martel Turnkey, hey, what zip codes do you want to buy in? Martel Turnkey gave those zip codes. Then they started texting those zip codes because they kind of knew what the houses were worth. And so they started texting those zip codes and said, hey, we're interested in making an offer on your house, et cetera, et cetera. Because with just one acquisition person, when you're texting, you can do 5,000 texts a day. You can burn through a lot of text just with one person. And then anybody that's warm, you can hop on the phone, close them. So that's what they were doing. And that's how they started, scaling up pretty quickly, was through texting and not cold calling, because you can get through so many people per day.
Absolutely. So, kind of starts from the wholesaling, driving those off-market leads to Martel Turnkey. Well, there's, building relationship with agents, investors in these multiple markets, property managers. Deals come from everywhere, right? The relationships that you built. So is most of the focus on Martel Turnkey, just kind of putting your resources in that, continue growing that, or what's your vision for your company in the next few years?
Yeah, so Martel Turnkey, again, is doing probably 150 houses a year right now. I think that's where we're going to hit this year. And then I think we're just going to keep scaling that up. Obviously, it's just hard to like go from 150 houses to like 300 houses because you have to add a lot of markets, you have to do a lot of testing, and then also like the contractors and stuff on the ground, like they're hard to scale up. You can't go from like one construction crew to 12. Everything's going to explode and blow up, and you're going to lose a lot of money because contractors won't show up, and then you're going to have a backlog of houses that need renovation. So there's a lot of shit that happens when you start like scaling up really quickly. So that's why the wholesaling business is super interesting to me, because you can scale that up. You just need to hire more people to do more acquisitions, get more deals under contract, and the buyers kind of come if you have good deals. And you can do that with marketing as well. So I still spend like majority of my day doing the Martel turnkey, managing everything there, putting out fires, and then I also have the turnkey business, which I spend little to any time on. Just when they have problems or questions, then I'll kind of help them out with that in scaling that up and stuff like that as well. So those two things are kind of what I spend the most of my time on. And then obviously I'm doing other things as well and investing money in different places and flips and stuff like that. But yeah, those are the two biggest things that I spend the most of my day on.
Absolutely. And what all markets are you in, Antoine? I know you said 5 markets. I know it's Memphis,
Yep.
Ohio.
So we're in Memphis, Cleveland, St. Louis, Detroit, and Akron.
What was that last one?
Akron.
Where is Akron?
Just below Cleveland, Ohio. It's like a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
And how are you kind of analyzing that data? I guess just in a simple little process that you could tell our listeners.
Yeah, so analyzing the data. So I actually made a website that everybody can go to. It's called investor-list.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will have all the data that I look for when I'm going and analyzing a market. That's the data that I look for when analyzing a market. So the population growth, job growth, what's the current population, the diversity of the workforce, the median home value, median rent, the rent to value ratio. So all of those things are things that I look for. And obviously you want a population that's stable or increasing. You want some sort of job growth. You want to have a good diversity of the workforce, obviously. So that website is like, I took all the data from the 7 different websites that I used to say on podcasts. The reason why I made the website, because I kept going on these podcasts and then people asked that question. And then I was like, man, I hate saying the same 7 websites over and over, which is like BLS.gov, the Census Bureau, Forbes, like all of these different websites. I just took all the data and then put it into one website so people can go see it easily. So that's exactly what I use when going into a new market, is looking at that data. And then who the major employers are is probably the only thing that's not on that website. You want to make sure that, you know, the major employer in your city is not like BlackBerry or something like that, you know.
Absolutely. And how was that process of building investor list? I mean, it seems like you just have a knack for coding and just, you know, integrating.
No, I don't even know how to code. Just one of the guys we hired for the wholesaling business is a developer, and so as a side project, we worked on that. And yeah, he worked on it for like a month and a half or so, and we got it to a good MVP stage. And now we're just seeing how people react to it or what they want added, and then we'll kind of, you know, if people really like it and are using it a lot, then obviously we'll spend more money on it. But right now, I think it's a good MVP.
Absolutely. And Antoine, what is I guess your end goal in all of this? I guess just, you know, what do you want to do the rest of your life, and just kind of, I guess is that a good question to formulate that right of saying what would be your end goal? Do you want to do something? I know Martel Turnkey is something you really want to grow with the wholesale operations too.
Yeah.
But what is your why?
Damn, that is a good question. What is my why? Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of like social impact you're doing when you're buying these houses, renovating them, renting them out. So I guess there is that feel good thing. But I don't know. I'm just like a businessman at heart, I guess. So I just love like taking a business, growing it, scaling it, hiring people, putting systems in place, and then like doing that again. And so I think that's I don't know if that's a why or whatever, but my main thing, or what I'm good at, is building businesses, I think. And like finding good idea, finding good people to like actually do the work, and motivating those people to be able to do more and more. So I would say that that's like what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life, is building businesses. For example, a couple of weeks ago, we actually started a trucking company because one of my investors was actually in the trucking business for the last 30 years. So we bought like 5 trucks last week, and now we have a trucking company. Like silly things like that, like just land on your lap, and you just like take action. You're like, oh, this could be a really good business here. And knowing how to analyze the numbers and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's my main thing, is like building businesses, and that's what I want to keep doing. All the current businesses, I see having them for a very, very long time. I don't see them going away at any given point. Maybe stabilizing at some certain or growing, but not as fast, because as the more and more time that I step away and start growing other companies, obviously, things are going to slow down and not grow as fast, and that's fine. But I mean, if you're doing 500 houses a year and you have a good, strong team, I mean, it's going to be really difficult to go from 500 to 1,000 houses a year. It's just going to take so much effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Antoine, what advice would you give to our listeners on the listen to this podcast right now? Mostly students, kind of where you started, like in college, not sure if they want to go work for a job. What advice would you give them?
I would say to just get out. If you want to do this, you have to find out 2 things. So like, if you have a family member close to you that has a little bit of money, again, my dad only had 40 grand, right? And most people are going to be like, oh, my dad, has 50 grand too, but he's never going to want to do this. Well, yeah, it took 2 years, right, of like convincing to, have somebody invest with me, especially as a first investment, right? So this person is going to have to trust you, and also know that you put a hell of a lot of work and research into what is about to happen. So I would say you got to find that one person that's going to kind of be able to fund your first investment into this real estate thing. And then I would say network your ass off. So if you, live in an expensive market, just network your ass off. It doesn't matter where you are, actually. If network your ass off on biggerpockets.com. I would go on BiggerPockets, type in your zip code, find people that live around you that have done at least one deal, and go just take them out to coffee, and leverage this college thing that all of you listening right now have as like a college student, because all of us see you as no risk, pretty much. Because you can just use a college card to get in anywhere. Like, oh, I'm a college student, I'm doing a report on local real estate investors. Like, just make up some shit, and then go to these meetings and coffee meetings and be like, okay, how did you do that? Exactly with this podcast and the questions you're asking. How did you do this? Where did you get the money? What would you recommend for a new college student to do in your shoes right now with the real estate market? Yada, yada, yada. And just collect like 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 of those stories, and then put them all together and be like, okay, these are my different paths, and like, this is what I can do. This is where I can get the money. This is the kind of deals I can do. This is where I can do them. And this is who I can do them, and or how to build the team. And then with all those stories, start actually doing something about it. Start taking action, with that information that you're being given. I think that's the biggest thing that I don't see a lot of young people doing, is actually like testing. And maybe they're like scared to lose money, or like scared to waste time, or scared to be made fun of by their classmates or whatever. But just go out there and take action. And that's probably the next biggest thing after you go and collect all the data, is actually like doing something with it, which 99% of the people don't do anything with. That's why on my social media, I post everything, because I know that nobody's going to do anything with the information, but they love watching it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Antoine. And something I found super interesting on your Instagram right before the podcast was your prediction, kind of how inflation will kind of affect the real estate market in the next coming years. And you made your table, and I just thought it was how much time went into that, making that table, and just, how much research you were doing. And if you would just kind of elaborate your vision.
Yeah. So I think Yeah, I think in that video, that was about how inflation is going to affect like the real estate prices and also like debt, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, I remember what it was about. All right. So currently the interest rates are like 5%, and the interest rates, the government's trying to hold inflation rates at 2%. So the interest rates are at 5%. Inflation, they're trying to hold it at 2%. But that's not going to happen with the amount of money that they printed last year. There's no way in hell that they're going to be able to keep it at 2% inflation. So what I'm predicting is that inflation is going to continue to rise from 2% to, let's say, like 6, 7, 8%. But if you think that that's going to happen, current debt right now from like Fannie Mae, you can go buy a house tomorrow and get a loan for like 3 to 5% interest. Okay, so you go lock that loan in place for 30 years. Then what you can do is you can go get this loan at 5% interest. And if you think inflation is going to go over that, that means you're actually going to make money from getting a loan for the next 30 years of your life. Because if inflation is 6% and you're paying debt at 5%, that means you have a 1% margin there where you're making money. You're actually making money from getting financial leverage. And so, with the inflation, I get them all confused. With the interest rates being the lowest that we've ever seen in history, and with inflation being extremely low, but with the probability that it's going to go up, there's no better time right now to buy real estate with this very inexpensive debt that the government's pretty much giving away. And even if I'm wrong, and even if you can lock in debt for 5% and inflation is still 2 or 3%, that's still an amazing, number. You're only paying the delta, which is going to be 2 or 3% for your debt, which is nothing. So even if I am wrong, it still is amazing time to buy real estate and get this long-term debt locked in place for 30 years. So that was, I think, what the gist of the video was about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of hear the breakdown from you because I was watching the video.
Yeah.
And I know I'm kind of jumping everywhere, but I'm very interested to kind of see where you got the knack for building businesses. Was it from your father growing up? Just growing up through high school and college, that kind of just you realized you didn't want to go down the job path and just do the W-2, or what was it?
So I think it was growing up. My mom had a lot of companies and my dad was working full time. My mom had a lot of different businesses. So I was helping her with those different businesses growing up. Then when I was like 15 or 16, I started my first company when I was started working at my mom's business when I was like 8 years old. I was working the cash register. Then at 12, 13, 14, 15, I was selling stuff to all my classmates that I would import from China or whatever. So I was just complete salesman. They're selling my neighbor's plums to the other people in the community with a wheelbarrow and stuff. So that was me as a kid. And then my dad had me go to sign up for an internship at a tech company. And so I was an intern at a tech company making like $15 an hour. It was a pretty big company. They were a public company, but I was working at this company, and I think he wanted to show me that this is not what you want. You don't want to work in an office on a 9-to-5 job making X amount of dollars. No matter how hard you work, you still get paid $15 an hour. So I think he showed me that. I did that internship for about a year, and I was like, fuck that. I never want to work for anybody ever. Like, this is horrible. Because throughout growing up, I always was selling my own stuff, and I was like, man, I could make more money selling my product, whatever it was, the stuff I imported from China, to my classmates than working at this job. And it's 10 times more fun. So I think that's what I kind of learned through growing up. And then that led me to start more and more companies. I even started like a mobile app in high school, and I got like 100,000 downloads, and started a bunch of different companies along the way. And then real estate was the real one that made me significant money that actually worked. But this is company number 20 for me. So I've just been doing it ever since I was 8 years old.
Absolutely, just taking action on your vision.
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome, man. And Antoine, is there any books or resources that just sharpened your way of thinking that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so a must read is Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I don't know if you had other people on the podcast that have said that book, but there's another book called that people don't mention a lot, which is Sell It Like Sirhant by Ryan Sirhant. He's a $1 million listing. Oh, you know it? Okay. But he's a guy from $1 Million Listing New York, and he's a really good salesman. So if you're into, not even if you're into sales, like if you want to have any kind of business, you're going to need to know sales, or at least how to run a sales team. So it's pretty interesting. I read it when Martel Turnkey was like in year one, and I had like one salesperson, and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's something I can learn in here. And it was, a really good book about a sales team, especially a real estate sales team. So that was really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely I'm reading. It was another Ryan Serhant's book. I think it was.
Big Money or.
Yeah, Big Money Energy. I'm about
Big Money Energy.
That. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that one good too?
Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good book. I'm the person that likes to read like 4 or 5 books at a time. So like recalling.
Oh boy.
The information, but I'm slowing down. I'm narrowing down to at least one book at a time, and just steps now. What you said at the beginning of just kind of starting so many businesses, having so many ideas where it can make impact, where they all kind of slow down. Kind of see that, personally, just thinking so many ideas and just taking it step by step, focusing on one, and then kind of growing it from there. But Antoine, is there anything else that you would recommend for our listeners, anybody listening to this podcast right now? Any advice that you'd want to give before we jump off of here?
Yeah, sure. So the last thing I would say that I notice with a lot of young people is, first of all, the first thing is taking action. The second thing is taking action with the wrong strategy for you. So like what I mean by that is, like, if you're a college student, you have no money and you don't know anybody with money, then you try to get into like stuff that requires a ton of money and a ton of time, like ground up real estate development of apartment buildings. It's like, kid, you're never going to be able to do that while you're in college. Like, I understand that that's something you want to do, and it's something I want to do is in college as well. But what I did is I went and found somebody that was doing it and said, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Can I come work for you so I can learn that model so I can go and do it myself in 30 years? That ended up not working out, obviously, but that's how I thought about it. So I want you to think about that as well. So if you college student with no money, limited amount of time, let's say, maybe you need to get into wholesaling, maybe you need to get into, working for somebody else and learning as much as you possibly can, right? Or if you know somebody that maybe has a little bit of money, maybe now you can focus on doing BRRRRs or doing small flips out of state and more affordable markets. But just make sure your resources match the real estate strategy. So don't go into something that, that requires a ton of capital when you have no capital and you don't know anybody with the capital, or requires a ton of time when right now you have a ton of courses that you're taking 15 credits, and there's no way in hell you're going to be able to do something that requires a ton of time. So just think about that when you're choosing the strategy to go down. Don't go into a strategy that like, oh my God, this one's so sexy, I love doing this or whatever. Like, everybody wants to do ground up apartment building construction projects. Trust me, I drive around LA and I'm salivating at them, but still I haven't done one because I don't even have the right resources to do that yet. Like, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket to do one huge project. I'm not at that point yet. So just think about that when you're choosing, where you want to put your action and put your effort, put it into the right strategy. Because I think a lot of people waste like 2 years of their life just spinning their wheels, trying to figure out how am I going to do Airbnbs when, they live in Memphis, Tennessee, and they shouldn't be doing Airbnbs in Memphis,
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that advice. That was great. Well, Antoine, I really appreciate your time, man. And thank you for hopping on the podcast today. And I think our listeners are going to love you, and all the advice you gave and the backstory, that you just unrolled for us. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And if anybody listening to wants to follow me or shoot me a message, just hit me up on Instagram at Martel Antoine. You can go there and shoot me a message. I try to reply to everybody. So if you watch this, just shoot me a message, and I'd love to help you guys out.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to promote at this time to our listeners? Antoine?
That's it. I think that'll be best for the people listening. I think that's going to be best. Just reach out to me if you have any additional questions, and I can help you guys get started.
Awesome. Thanks
Cool.
so much, Antoine.
Thanks for having me.